No.
I knew I was forgetting something. Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It is wonderful to see everyone here, and wonderful to see Sarah and Jerry Ann's parrot, I believe that is. Very beautiful, very green. And we have a special Shabbat. We get another one of our 2-for-1 special Shabbats because it is both Shabbat Shira, which literally means Shabbat of song, although every Shabbat at Temple Beth Torah is a Shabbat of song. But we are specifically going to be reading from the part of the Torah where the Israelites celebrate that they have just gone through the Sea of Reeds that split right before their eyes. In a poem called Shirat Hayam. We'll talk a little bit about it later. So it's Shabbat Shira, and it's also Martin Luther King weekend Shabbat. So we will honor his legacy as well. So I hope that you are doing well and that you are ready to get in the Shabbat spirit. We are going to begin this evening with a nigun. It's a different nigun than what we have been singing recently. It is the nigun of the melody of Shirat Hayam. It's pretty repetitive, but it's a good one. So I hope that you'll catch on, and then when we'll sing it later, then it will feel familiar to you. It goes a little bit like this. There we go. Goes a little like this. There we go. We will continue with the lighting of the Shabbat candles, which I will be leading here, and I invite you to join along with me at home if you have your own Shabbat candles that you haven't lit yet. Now is the time, in just a moment. I begin with a prayer of gratitude for all that is holy in my life. God needs no words, no English or Hebrew, no semantics, and no services, but I need them. Through prayer, I can sense my inner strength, my inner purpose, my inner joy, my capacity to love. As I reach upward in prayer, I sense these qualities in my Creator. To love God is to love each other, to work to make our lives better. To love God is to love the world God created and to work to perfect it. To love God is to love dreams of peace and joy that illumine all of us and bring that vision to life. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Before we say the words of Or Zarua, speaking about how light is sown for the righteous, even amongst the darkness, we remember Dr. Martin Luther King's quote from his book, Strength to Love. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. We continue getting in the Shabbat spirit with the words of Lecha Dodi. Lecha Dodi likrat kalai, yalalai, 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 b'nei Shabbat, nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kalai, yalalai, 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 Shabbat nekabela shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad ishmi'anu לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם נשואה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, יללה יללה יללה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, יללה יללה יללה, פני שבת נקבלה. Please rise in all the ways you're able. בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצוהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, יללה יללה יללה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, יללה יללה יללה, פני שבת נקבלה. Please remain in your upright position as we continue with the words of Baruch Hu. Please be seated. If I could ask someone to read for us the Martin Luther King quote that is above. Seeing if I can find somebody who is raising their hand.
I'll read it.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Love is the greatest force in the universe. It is the heartbeat of the moral cosmos. He who loves is a participant in the being of God. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in a handwritten letter, mid-1960s.
Thank you so much. ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה continue with the words of Shema. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha. Ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavcha hayom al levavecha. V'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam b'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech uv'shuchbecha uv'kumecha ukshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot beineinecha uchtavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha. Lema'an tizkeru va'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim le'Elohechem. Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim lihiot lachem le'Elohim. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Adonai Elohechem emet. Sing the song of men and women joined in understanding and respect. The song of God's miracles, an earth protected and cherished, a gift for our children and the generations to come. The song of a land once ravaged by war, now quiet and content, her soldiers home to leave no more. The song of a world redeemed, the song of peace. And at that moment, we will proclaim Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, just as our ancestors did this Torah portion. We will get to hear it not just this time, but also once more later on in the service. But in the meantime, let's enjoy the moment that we have in this version of Mi chamocha that we'll hear. Yai, 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 da, 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 ya, da, da, yai, da, 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 ya, da, 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 ya, da, da, yai, da, 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 ya, da, 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 da. I could call on one more person to share with us this reading for the Hashkivenu. Are there any volunteers? I see Michelle.
Give us a place to rest, Adonai, our God. Bring us into shelter in the soft, long evening shadows of your truth. For with you are true protection and safety, and in your presence are acceptance and gentle love. Watch over us as we go forth. Prepare for us as we return. Spread over us your shelter of peace, over all we love, over our Jerusalem and yours.
Thank you so much. Baruch atah Adonai haborei sukat shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai haborei sukat shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Ve'al Yerushalayim ve'al kol amo. Ve'al Yerushalayim shalom. Ve'al Yerushalayim ve'al kol amo. Ve'al Yerushalayim shalom. Baruch atah Adonai haborei sukat shalom. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. We continue with our tefillah, the core part of our service. I encourage you to rise in all of the ways that you are able. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah. Ha'el hagadol hagibur v'hanora, El Elyon, gomer chasadim tovim, ve'konei hakol, ve'zocher chastei avot v'imahot, u'mevii geula livnei v'neihem, lema'an shemo be'ahava, melech ozer u'moshiach u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibur leolam Adonai, Mechaye hakol atah rav lehoshia, Mashiv haruach u'morid hagashem, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechaye hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim ve'rofei cholim, Umatir asurim, umekayim emunato, lishenei afar, michamocha ba'al gevurot, Umido melech, melech memit umechaye, umatzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman ata l'hachayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, mechaye hakol. Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, u'kadoshim b'chol yom yehallelujah selah. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. Please take a moment for your own silent prayer. Shalom, Aleinu, Ve'al kol Yisrael, Ve'imeru Amen. Oseh Shalom b'imromav, Aseh Shalom Aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imeru Amen. Oseh Shalom b'imromav, Aseh Shalom Aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imeru Amen. Oseh Shalom b'imromav, Aseh Shalom Aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imeru Amen. Ve'imeru Amen. Ooh, goodness, sorry about that. We are going to move into what I am lovingly calling a taste of Torah. With two people in the room, it makes it a little hard to do a Torah service, even though we certainly have at least a minyan among those with us today. Singing and carrying a Torah is really something to admire in those who can do it. But what we're going to do instead is we're going to have a taste of Torah. We're going to hear some words of Torah sung, and we're going to learn a little bit about it, and that is going to be, that's going to give us a little bit of that sweetness that we are looking for this Shabbat. So we are going to be reading from Shirat Hayam, which I have been hinting at all service. It is one of my favorite parts of the Torah, not so much for its meaning, which I'll get into in just a second, but really if you look at the way that it shows up on the screen, that's also how it's written in the Torah. In any Torah that you see, this is how it looks. And if you notice, there's kind of a wave character to it. It's Shirat Hayam, the song of the sea, and you see that even in the way that it's written on our scroll. So that is something to note. It is, in addition to being in our Torah, it's also in the traditional morning liturgy, where we sing the special melody that we opened with this evening, that nigun that we started. And when I hear that melody, I think a lot about when I was living in Israel. Once a month, I got to spend at the Western Wall with this group called Women of the Wall, which is fighting for equal access to the wall and to ritual at the wall, including reading Torah at the wall. And whenever I hear this melody, it just takes me back to that moment when I'm surrounded by the sound of all of these people who care so deeply about the Jewish people and about equality in the state of Israel. So when you're hearing it, I hope that you'll hear a bit of that love that I'm bringing to it. Something else just to know is that Shirat Hayam is known for its archaic language. To those who aren't so familiar with Hebrew, it all kind of sounds the same. There's chaz, and there's yaz, and there's taz, and there's a whole bunch of Hebrew-sounding words, but actually it is written in an older style, both in terms of its vocabulary and in its storytelling format and the way that it's describing God. For example, this text uses language like Adonai ish milchama, so God is a man of war, or God is a warrior, which, not gonna lie, not my favorite characterization of God. And some of the language in general, the translation itself can be troubling. And if you find yourself struggling with that, you are not alone, and we'll get through that part together. And if you end up wanting to talk about it, feel free to send me an email after Shabbat. And so we will get started, but before engaging in Torah, even though we're not going to say the reading of the Torah Blessing since there's not a physical Torah in front of us, we are going to bless the engaging in words of Torah. So join with me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Az yashir Moshe uvenei Yisrael et hashira hazot l'Adonai vayomru lemor ashir al Adonai ki ga'o ga'a sus v'rochvo rama vayam Ozi vezimratya vayehi li lishua ze'eli ve'anvehu Elohei avi ve'arom emenhu Adonai ish milchama Adonai shemo Markevot paro v'chelo yarav vayam ומבחר של אישיו טובעו בים סוף תהומות יחס יומו ירדו וימסולות כמו אבן ימינך אדוני נדרי בכוח ימינך אדוני תיראת אויב וברוב גאונך תהרוס קמך, תשלח ארונך יאכלמו כקש, וברוח אפיך נערמו מים. ניצבו כמו נד נוזלים, קפאו תהומות בלב ים. אמר אויב ארדוף אשיג, אחלק שלל תמלאמו נפשי. אריק חרבי תורי שמו ידי, נשבת ברוחך כי שמו ים. צללו כעופרת במים אדירים, מי כמוך בעלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש. נורא תהילות עושה פלא, נתית ימינך תבלעמו ארץ. With words of Torah in our hearts and on our minds, we think of those who are in need of healing at this time. If you are thinking of someone who's in need of healing, or if you yourself are in need of healing, I encourage you to say their names aloud to someone in the room with you, to say their name to yourself, to hold their name in your heart, or to type their name in the chat. We also call to mind all of those on the front lines, our medical professionals, our teachers, and all those who are not receiving as much protection from COVID as they need. We sing the words of Mishaberach. Mishaberach avotenu mekor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength Shabbat Shira is the Shabbat when we read of the Israelites finally leaving Egypt, crossing the Red Sea, and then singing out for joy and gratitude for their newfound freedom. This Shabbat, we are also remembering Dr. Martin Luther King and the work he did to further civil rights in our country. How fitting that these celebrations fell on the same Shabbat this year. In his sermon, The Death of Evil Upon the Seashore, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. used this very story of the Red Sea to share a hopeful message about the struggle for civil rights in the United States and around the world, citing victories in civil rights as well as foreign victories of those living under colonization who were fighting for their rights to self-determination. King saw the light outshining the darkness, good overcoming evil. He preached this sermon on May 17th, 1956, on the second anniversary of the Brown versus Board of Education decision. So this evening, we will learn Torah from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., hearing selections from his sermon, The Death of Evil Upon the Seashore. Selection 1. There is hardly anything more obvious than the fact that evil is present in the universe. It projects its nagging prehensile tentacles into every level of human existence. We may debate over the origin of evil, but only the person victimized with a superficial optimism will debate over its reality. Evil is with us as a stark, grim, and colossal reality. The Bible affirms the reality of evil in glaring terms. It symbolically pictures it in the work of a serpent, which comes to inject a discord into the beautiful, harmonious symphony of life in a garden. It sees it in a nagging tares, disrupting the orderly growth of stately wheat. It sees it in a ruthless mob hanging the world's most precious character on a cross between two thieves. The Bible is clear, crystal clear, in its perception of evil. But we need not stop with the glaring examples of the Bible to establish the reality of evil. We need only to look out into the wide arena of everyday life. We have seen evil in tragic lust and inordinate selfishness. We have seen it in high places where men are willing to sacrifice truth on altars of self-interest. We have seen it in imperialistic nations trampling over other nations with the iron feet of oppression. We have seen it clothed in garments of calamitous wars, which left battlefields painted with blood, filled nations with widows and orphans, and sent men home physically handicapped and psychologically wrecked. We have seen evil in all its tragic dimensions. Selection 2. A graphic example of this truth is found in an incident in the early history of the Hebrew people. You will remember that at a very early stage in her history, the children of Israel were reduced to the bondage of physical slavery under the gripping yoke of Egyptian rule. Egypt was the symbol of evil in the form of humiliating oppression, ungodly exploitation, and crushing domination. The Israelites symbolized goodness in the form of devotion and dedication to the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. These two forces were in a continual struggle against each other, Egypt struggling to maintain her oppressive yoke, and Israel struggling to gain freedom from this yoke. Finally, however, these Israelites, through the providence of God, were able to cross the Red Sea and thereby get out of the hands of Egyptian rule. The Egyptians, in a desperate attempt to prevent the Israelites from escaping, had their armies go in the Red Sea behind them. But as soon as the Egyptians got into the Red Sea, the parted waves swept back upon them, and the rushing waters of the sea soon drowned all of them. As the Israelites looked back, all they could see was here and there a poor drowned body beaten up upon the seashore. For the Israelites, this was a great moment. It was the end of a frightful period in their history. It was a joyous daybreak that had come to end the long night of their captivity. This story symbolizes something basic about the universe. It symbolizes something much deeper than the drowning of a few men, for no one can rejoice at the death or the defeat of a human person. This story, at bottom, symbolizes the death of evil. It was the death of inhuman oppression and ungodly exploitation. The death of the Egyptians upon the seashore is a glaring symbol of the ultimate doom of evil in its struggle with good. There is something in the very nature of the universe which is on the side of Israel in its struggle with every Egypt. There is something in the very nature of the universe which ultimately comes to the aid of goodness in its perennial cycle with evil. There is something in this universe which justifies James Russell Lowell in saying, "Truth forever on the scaffold, wrong forever on the throne. Yet that scaffold sways the future, and behind the dim unknown stands God within the shadow, keeping watch above his own." Selection 3. It is our own struggle for freedom and justice in this country we have gradually seen the death of evil. Many years ago, the Negro was thrown into the Egypt of segregation, and his great struggle has been to free him from the crippling restrictions and paralyzing effects of this vicious system. For years, it looked like he would never get out of this Egypt. The closed Red Sea always stood before him with discouraging dimensions. There were always those pharaohs with hardened hearts who, despite the cries of many a Moses, refused to let these people go. But one day, through a world-shaking decree by the 9 justices of the Supreme Court of America and an awakened moral conscience of many white persons of goodwill, backed by the providence of God, the Red Sea was opened, and the forces of justice marched through to the other side. As we look back and see segregation caught in the rushing waters of historical necessity, evil in the form of injustice and exploitation cannot survive. There is a Red Sea in history that ultimately comes to carry the force of goodness to victory, and that same Red Sea closes in to bring doom and destruction to the forces of evil. This is our hope. This is the hope and conviction that all men of goodwill live by. It is at bottom the conviction that all reality hinges on moral foundations, and that the whole cosmic universe has spiritual control. It is therefore fitting and proper that we assemble here, just 2 years after the Supreme Court's momentous decision on desegregation, and praise God for his power and the greatness of his purpose, and pray that we gain the vision and the will to be his co-workers in this struggle. Let us not despair. Let us not lose faith in man, and certainly not in God. We must believe that a prejudiced mind can be changed, and that man, by the grace of God, can be lifted from the valley of hate to the high mountain of love. Let us remember that as we struggle against Egypt, we must have love, compassion, and understanding goodwill for those against whom we struggle, helping them to realize that as we seek to defeat evils of Egypt, we are not seeking to defeat them, but to help them, as well as ourselves. God has a great plan for this world. His purpose is to achieve a world where all men will live together as brothers, and where every man recognizes the dignity and worth of all human personality. He is seeking at every moment of his existence to lift men from their bondage of some evil Egypt, carrying them through the wilderness of discipline, and finally, to the promised land of personal and social integration. Even in these powerful words, there are parts that, are a little hard to hold on to. Some of which because he was a pastor, and so he was writing, thinking about a Christian perspective. And also because there are some things in our world that might not jive with what he's saying. But the message overall is to hold on to hope in darkness. And he symbolized that for many. He held the torch for hope, even for so many who had such difficult darkness where they thought they would never see light. Our world lost Dr. Martin Luther King too soon, and we are grateful for his Torah. Let's take a moment of silence to think of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We now continue with Aleinu. Please rise in all the ways you are able. Aleinu leshabeach la'adon hakol, la'ateit gedula leotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoyei ha'aratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, vegor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim, ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. We take this moment to think of those who we are remembering this Shabbat. Please rise as your loved one's name is read. Arthur C. Anderson, father of Ann Anderson. Selma Benjamin, remembered by Joe Eagle. Sina Elfont, remembered by Betty Rogoff. Gail Epstein, mother of Janine Charlton. Herbert Gelb, father of Alan Gelb. Isaac Clayman, father of Mira Och. William Weiss, remembered by Ronnie Peterson. Lawrence Wiseman, father of Jonathan Wiseman. We invite all who are observing their first year of mourning to rise at this time. And we now rise with our mourners as a community with the words of Mourner's Kaddish. Yitzgadal v'yitzkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayed dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'yizman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'lalmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudsha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min Shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru, Amen. Zichronam livracha, may all of their memories be for a blessing, to which we say, Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, Amen. Ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ya'aseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Please be seated. It is now time for some announcements, so I pass it over to our handy-dandy president to share those announcements with us. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. As a reminder, there will be no Torah study this week. There is so much more to Jewish history than shtetls and tenements. Join us virtually on Thursday, February 3rd at 5 p.m. for celebrating Tzipporah's children with speaker Cantor David Fair. We will learn about the history of American Black Jewish music and lived experiences. This event is open to all ages, 12 and up. Registration will open this upcoming week. Please register by Wednesday, February 2nd to receive the Zoom link. A $10 donation is suggested. This program is part of the What You Didn't Learn in Religious School series. In celebration of Temple Beth Torah's 60th anniversary, women of Temple Beth Torah invite one and all to join us for a virtual tour of Israel. Licensed Israeli tour guide Sherry Robbins will help us explore Israel's miracles and complexities in a unique way, virtually, with no jet lag. We welcome you to 3 consecutive Sundays of discovery on February 27th, March 6th, and March 13th at 1:30 p.m. Registration is now open, and since this is a virtual event, everyone is welcome to attend no matter where they are in the world. Please see our virtual tour of Israel event page for details, pricing, registration, and payment. If you have questions, please email womentbt@gmail.com. And join us for 60 by 60. TBT's participation in the Fremont Green Challenge, where we challenge our community to take 60 greening actions at home before our 60th anniversary in June. Together, we will help reduce our carbon footprint and create a greener world. Additional details are on our social action page, with more info coming soon. And for questions, please contact Susan Schwartz. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. We continue with some blessings. So if you have a family member nearby that you would like to share a blessing with, please reach out to them. If you are not in the same space as your family, I encourage you to close your eyes and hold those you are sending blessings to in your heart. And we say, may God bless you and keep you. May God shine God's face upon you and be gracious to you. May God's face turn to you and grant you peace. To which we say, Amen. We continue with Kiddush. So if you want to quickly grab your sweet drink, perhaps it's grape juice, perhaps it's wine, perhaps it's something else, please feel free to do so, and we will share a blessing together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikra'e kodesh zecher letziat Mitzrayim ki banu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol hamim v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat L'chaim. We continue with the motzi. So if you have challah or bread or cookies or anything nearby, we will take a moment to bless those. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'te'avon. Close out our evening. We'll sing words based on prophets. These words are written by Sheldon Lowe, inspired by our tradition. So I hope that you enjoy it. The words are, let justice roll like a river and kindness like a mighty stream. Let justice roll like a river and kindness like a mighty stream. Let the waters flow on forever and let them wash over me. For every heart, for every soul, it's time we go find it once more. So what are we waiting for now? Justice roll like a river, and kindness like a mighty stream. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.